You hear a sudden, loud noise, and before you can form a conscious thought, your eyes squeeze shut and your shoulders brace. This biological speed was once a survival necessity. Today, those same automated reflexes drive our deepest conflicts and modern miseries. For 40 years, psychologist Paul Ekman cataloged these uncontrollable responses. Building on the observations of Charles Darwin, he quantified the exact facial muscles and physiological triggers that define human feeling. Half a world away, the Dalai Lama approached the same problem from the opposite direction. As a Buddhist monk, he represented a 1,000-year-old intellectual tradition dedicated entirely to reducing emotional suffering through rigorous self-analysis. Ekman relied on empirical external data. The Dalai Lama relied on analytical internal philosophy. Despite their separate universes, both men had reached the limits of their fields while trying to prevent human emotions from doing harm. In 2004, they crossed paths at a conference in Vancouver. The event gathered global religious leaders to discuss how humanity might learn to open the heart. While other leaders cited their specific religious doctrines, the Dalai Lama offered a critique. He pointed out that religion frequently causes global divisions. He argued that the only force capable of unifying humanity is our shared baseline desire for happiness. Watching from the audience, Ekman saw a gap in that logic. He knew that while a desire for happiness unifies us, our aggressive, protective emotional reflexes are the very things that drive us apart. Ekman drafted a 20-page document outlining the unresolved scientific questions about this biological divide and sent it directly to the monk's office. That document transformed Ekman from a skeptical observer into a collaborator. The stage was set for a collision between the hard methods of a behavioral scientist and the insights of a spiritual icon. In 2006, the meeting took place at a private farm in Libertyville, Illinois. The security was intense. U.S. State Department officers rotated shifts every 30 minutes, and a getaway car remained idling outside the front door 24 hours a day. Inside the room, the rigid external security vanished. Ekman and the Dalai Lama sat inches apart, matching deep intellectual focus with frequent, loud bursts of laughter. They committed to a total of 39 hours of private conversation, dedicated exclusively to dissecting the mechanics of human feeling. In this environment, the usual boundaries between hard science and spirituality dissolved. They cross-examined each other's methods, testing Western psychological data against Eastern contemplative practice to see which tools actually worked. This timeline visualizes a core scientific concept Ekman brought to the meeting, the refractory period. This is the microscopic gap in time between an emotional trigger, like a sudden insult, and the physical action that follows it. Psychology provides a map for this sequence, measuring the spike in heart rate and the sudden muscle tension. However, identifying a biological trigger doesn't automatically stop it from firing. The Dalai Lama presented mindfulness as a mechanical intervention. Training the consciousness serves to actively stall the impulse, physically forcing the refractory period to widen. Stretching that gap provides enough time to separate a destructive act from the person committing it. It allows a person to turn blind hatred into a motivated, controlled anger that addresses a problem without attacking the person. Ekman realized that Dalai Lama operated exactly like a rigorous scientist. The only difference was that the monk used human consciousness as his primary laboratory instead of external datasets. By merging biological mapping with contemplative training, they demonstrated that our biological reflexes are more malleable than Western science had previously assumed. After 39 hours, the conversation changed how both men approach their own fields. The data-driven scientist and the contemplative master found that their methods were solving for the same human variables. Reviewing the transcripts, psychologist Daniel Goleman concluded that emotional intelligence is a refined skill rather than a fixed trait. It improves through repetitive mental practice. This balance does not require monastic devotion in a cave or a PhD in a laboratory. It relies on the intentional training of the mind to recognize impulses before they become actions. This exchange moved specialized monastic and scientific insights into a secular framework for emotional management that is accessible to anyone. The resulting methodology begins by adopting the cold, objective eye of a Darwinian scientist. This involves observing our own physiological triggers and emotional scripts as if they were specimens in a lab. Simultaneously, we apply the dedicated practice of a monk. Once we recognize our automated reactions, we can use mindfulness to pause, evaluate, and choose a compassionate response. This synthesis suggests that while we are born with these reflexes, we are not necessarily enslaved by them. Learning to observe the gap between impulse and action offers a path toward both